suppress gets expressed. Whatever we push down, shame, our fear, our anxiety, our wants, our needs, our sexuality, it's gonna come out somewhere, especially sexuality. It's the most powerful force in all of creation. If you can impose shame, guilt, fear, anxiety on any natural occurring human behavior, and if you can get people to buy in, you can control them from birth till death.
Dr. Robert Glover, thank you for making time to do this.
Ooh, thank you for that little Wim Hof practice we just did.
You mentioned you just got back from a peyote ceremony.
Yeah, I traveled to where you are, and you were traveling somewhere else at the time. I came to do medicine where you live, and you went to do medicine somewhere else. Yeah, I was in
What was that
Austin.
like?
The shaman asked us not to talk about our experience, but I'll tell you kind of I'll give you around the fringes of it. And I I don't have a lot to compare it to. My primary experience with psychedelics, plant medicine is with ayahuasca, which I've done 8 ceremonies with ayahuasca. And, to kind of give it a comparison, um, you've recently just been doing ayahuasca yourself apparently, and you've done some other things. They refer to ayahuasca as mother, and they kind of there's the mother wisdom. It's very feminine, in the experience. And, like with the feminine, you never know what you're gonna get. That was my experience with ayahuasca. You can create an intention, but, mother's gonna give you what mother needs to give you and what you need to receive. So it's a very, you just you open to that experience and let it take you where it takes you, and you don't always wanna go there, but you welcome it. With the peyote, it was described to me beforehand as more like grandfather. It's like a solid arm on your shoulder. It's a warm blanket. It's the soft speaking of a wise man who's been there. And, I was fortunate, I got to do it in a group of men. It was just guys, 8 of us with a Comanche, Native American shaman. He asked me not to call him shaman, but I did. Because there's something about peyote that he even said it brings out humor. It likes humor. And, I just had a beautiful camaraderie with these other guys, 2 of whom I already knew pretty well because 'cause I'd done a men's program with 2 of them, so I'd already gone deep in the desert with a couple of them more than once, and, without plant medicine, just deep connection. And, the others I didn't know, but I got to know. It's a very, kind of opening experience of connection. There seems to be a part of it kinda leads you to kind of wanna spend some time alone with it, and then other parts of it, you wanna connect. And again, a lot of humor and just lightness to it. Um, Whereas I've never had, like, a bad or terribly dark ayahuasca experience, but it can go dark. It can go relatively dark. And since I only have one experience with peyote to compare it to, Um, it felt like this is something that you could do with some regularity because it didn't seem to take a big toll on me. Ayahuasca it can knock you down. Um,
Sounds like a relationship.
yeah, exactly. And so, kind of being a guy is kind of like, yeah, I'll take that grandfatherly experience any day. The ayahuasca, the feminine, the crazy, you not know what you're gonna get, it'll take you through the ringer, it'll teach you what you need to learn. Yeah, maybe every now and then we'll go do that with mother. So it was a positive experience, really enjoyed it. What really set it up nicely is I originally booked my trip to Austin because 'cause I'd been there back in April of this year. And I just happened to meet a tattoo artist who had a studio right below the Airbnb I was staying in. And while I was in Austin the previous time, I was kind of a guest speaker to a men's retreat out towards Dripping Springs area with some other men that I know well that were leading it. And, so I got to go be kinda grandfather at that. You go be a wise elder, to the best of my ability to play that role. And, there's a bunch of young dudes like your age, and they're all in great shape, and they're all tatted up. And I'd already been thinking, maybe it's about time to get another tattoo. And then I just walk into this guy's studio. I thought it was an art studio, it's a tattoo studio. He and I got to talking, and I said, I want to get a tattoo to represent my father. I've kind of thought of a blackbird because whenever I see a blackbird, I think that's my dad watching me. He's looking out for me. And he suggested a raven by James Audubon, showed me a picture. It's beautiful. And this guy, I said, well, can you do it Friday? And he goes, I'm booked out till September. That's back in April. So I booked him in October. And then when I told some friends I was going to be there in Austin, they said, well, you want to do a peyote ceremony? So it was great because the ceremony was started Thursday night and all day Friday with the medicine. Then Saturday, get up, have pancakes, connect, and process. And then I went straight from there to get the tattoo. And so I got this beautiful raven on my arm that just it was a great collaborative experience. It happened. This guy owns the shop that it was in, and there was nobody in there on a Saturday. Austin City Limits was going on. He said that he'd never had a Saturday with no one in there. So he and I spent 3 hours kind of just getting to know each other, going deep into just male stuff, relationship. I'd previously given him a copy of my book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, when I first met him. And he said, I got to admit to you, I haven't read it because the title sounded kind of shitty to me. Like, why would we want to be not nice? And this guy's a genuinely kind, loving, generous man who's been to prison twice, who was a heroin addict, crack cocaine addict for 20 years. He's sober, vegan. And it was just a lovely masculine experience to have him putting art on my arm. Felt very collaborative, like he was very in the moment with me, checking how was I doing. I could tell he was happy with how this was going and turning out. So I don't know how much of all of that is the peyote experience, but it was a beautiful experience, and it just, happened that I got to do grandfather right before getting a tattoo in honor of my father. And, so, it was just it felt aligned. Everything about it felt
Yeah.
aligned.
I find something interesting tends to happen in my experience of doing some form of psychedelics or plant medicines or whatever the best terms are for them.
I've
Oftentimes
learned don't call them drugs. People
yeah,
get
right.
upset if I refer to them as drugs.
Yeah, I think there's a differentiation. But I find oftentimes in that window of a week or two before and after, there's a lot more synchronicities. What that is, I'm not sure. Maybe it's just a noticing. Maybe it's me applying value where values, not necessary, or it's always would be there, but I'm starting to see the world in that way. Whatever it is, I notice things like that, and it seems like maybe that was a relevant thing for you this
Yeah,
week.
I remember first time I did ayahuasca down in Costa Rica. Flying down there the day before, you mentioned you were down in Peru and you got stomach poisoning. I got some kind of stomach infection because I woke up or probably all night the day before we are supposed to do the first ceremony. I'd never done it before. I just had the shits and went and talked to the doctor beforehand. And, and of course, what they tell you, oh, the medicine started working the day you decided to come down and do this trip. So months ago. Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, we'll go with
I
that.
experienced that. I don't know if it necessarily is one to one with like you getting diarrhea, but I definitely do experience that once you set your attention to the thing and you know you're about to think. I think what happens to me in my experience of that is I know that I'm going to have to be honest. There's going to become a time if I schedule the date for 2 months from now or whatever, I know I'm going to have to be completely honest in 2 months. And so whatever bullshit that I'm hanging on to right now, that in my sober mind, I'm able to kind of like wrangle myself around or avoid or any of that. I know 2 months from now, I'm going to be completely repenting for everything that is or was or will be. And so I may as well just start that purging process now. I think is to make it the least amount of pain possible when I arrive to the actual place is my experience with like the ceremony starting.
And I applied that to this, that model that the medicine's working. Well, however we want to look at that metaphysically, spiritually, whatever. I applied that with the peyote because I didn't know I was going to do peyote much in advance. Other than I've got a friend there who had asked me a couple of other times about if I wanted to sit with the peyote, and I'd wanted to do it for some time, but I just hadn't been able to make the time to do it. And then so when I knew I was already going, primarily to get the tattoo, I gave myself a week in Austin because I can do some in-person interviews there, and I got a lot of friends there, a lot of men that I've gotten to know through men's work. So I was just going to go spend the time, enjoy. end my week with the tattoo. Well, I find out maybe a week before I go, I'm going to get to do the sit with the peyote. And I remember going to tell my wife, and she's done ayahuasca with me. Whenever I go down to Costa Rica, she'd come with me. And she's Mexican, and grew up Catholic, and well, kind of a different spin on spirituality. And I went and told her, in Spanish, that I was going to get to do peyote while I was in Austin. And I don't know how most people's partners would respond to something like that, but she just lit up and said, "Verdad, que chido."
Yeah.
Really? How
Well, it's
cool.
it's a Mexican, I think, like, a Mexican heritage peyote more, from my
And so
understanding.
she was excited to hear I was gonna do that, and so I got there, and when I got to Austin, I felt I did, like, 3 in-person interviews early in the week. I had a couple meals with people that, were really supportive of the work that I do, and I mean, all that felt really good, and I felt really exhausted from it, just wiped out. So about Wednesday, I was just feeling exhausted. And I had a call with my men's group, the group of guys I've been chatting with twice a month for about 7 years. And they know me well, I know them well. And I got on the call and I said, I'm just feeling nihilistic. Like nothing has meaning, nothing matters, and that's not me in general. I mean, at 68, I launched a new company in the last couple of years. I say yes to opportunities to go do cool stuff like go to Costa Rica, go do the peyote. So I'm still going strong, and I'm excited about life. And I've committed myself to the work I'm doing for at least another 20 years. If I stay in good health and my brain keeps working, you and I will still be talking 20 years from now. That's my intention. And so to just feel like no energy, nihilistic, nothing matters, and knowing what I know from my other plant medicine experience, I even just sat with that, told my friends about it, and just felt it as part of the process that perhaps there was an emptying of me happening, kind of emptying out the vessel so it could be filled. And then once I did start doing the ceremony with the peyote, that theme really seemed to continue, that I was being emptied out of just a lot of things that don't matter, that aren't important, to be filled with whatever is important, whatever is coming. And and so even that sense of nihilism before doing the ceremony, and that's not me. I don't normally feel that. Um, it felt like part of the process. Like I had to empty in order to get filled.
It feels so, uh, segue into the whole concept of nice guy, which I just listened to the Audible audio version, which you read, which is great. And I mentioned before this as well. It was quite exposing to me because there's a lot of aspects in it where I saw myself in that. And so there's a lot of moments where I was like, God dang it, Robert.
Oh, I've been called a lot worse than God dang it, Robert.
But so part by seamless segue, the emptying aspect, I feel like a person that's in a nice guy kind of archetype in that space, there might be a bit of a fear of emptying or a fear of aloneness or a fear of separation. You talk about enmeshment with the mother and a monogamous relationship with the mother. And could you define what is a nice guy from your perspective, and also the origin of where that comes from for you? I'd imagine the origin comes from you having experienced that within yourself, I'd presume,
Yeah,
with the way
yeah.
that you wrote it.
I am a recovering nice guy, and I say that No More Mr. Nice Guy is my autobiography. I just use other men's stories to tell my story. Um, and I've been a recovering nice guy for 30 years, and I love it when people like find my book or talk to me and say, "Robert, how long will this take?" And I go, "I don't know. I'll let you know when I find out how long it takes to do this recovery." And what it is, the elevator kind of pitch is a nice guy is somebody typically at a very early age. I'm talking about few weeks, few months, few years old, inaccurately internalized a belief that I'm not okay just as I am. Now, this is an emotional belief. It's often not an intellectual belief because in our first couple of years of life, the only part of our brain that's fully online and functioning is primarily down on the brainstem, primitive parts of the brain, the fight, flight, freeze part of the brain. And these parts of the brain, primarily the amygdala, theory is store up emotional memory of the earliest experiences of life. And that part of the brain is fully online when we're born. And it manages respiration, heartbeat, survival, and fight, flight, freeze. So it's all about sympathetic nervous system of just being in survival mode. The prefrontal cortex in men, the reasoning part of our brain, doesn't finish developing to about age 25. And that's why our car insurance goes down. We quit getting so many speeding tickets and doing so many stupid things. Just because our brains finally get wired up to where we make more reasonable decisions, not just these reflexive fight, flight, freeze, reactive decisions. But that part of the brain that internalizes emotional belief about self and the world, not in words, not in thinking, not even in picture, purely in emotion. That part of the brain is storing up. This is what the world is like. This is who I am in this world. And what happens is internalized belief that I'm bad typically occurs because anytime a child has any kind of uncomfortable or painful experience, they're cold and they don't get wrapped up. They're hungry, they don't get fed. They shit their diaper, they don't get changed. They're sad, lonely, don't get held or burped or smiled at, whatever. And it could be just from parents being busy, tired, out of touch, addicted, angry, not present, distressed, whatever. Anything that makes a child feel uncomfortable gets internalized as, in a narcissistic way, I caused that. Now, it's not thinking, it's purely emotion. I am the cause of that. I cause it, therefore I can fix it.
Yeah, it's a protective mechanism.
It's protective. And every child does this, every child. And so every child develops these protective mechanisms. We could call them survival mechanisms, defense mechanisms. We can call them neuroses. Neuroses isn't a bad word. It's just what we develop to try to make sense of the world and survive in it. With using a primitive, underdeveloped brain. Okay. And then we tend to carry all of that into childhood, adolescent, where we try on a lot of different neuroses, and then they pretty much get solidified into adulthood. And we all do it in various ways. For the nice guy, it's like if I cause these bad things or uncomfortable things to happen, I can prevent them or fix them. So it's a grandiose way of viewing the world, but children are grandiose. So often if I can become never a moment's problem, if I can become needless and wantless, if I can always be happy, if I can be different from father, if I can make mom happy, make dad not angry, if I can, be whatever, then these bad things won't happen that make me feel bad and trigger my shame that I'm bad because I caused them. Now, this is all distortion. It's not accurate, but we're talking about emotion here. Emotions don't have to be accurate. They just are what they are. So we grow up, through childhood, adolescence, especially in adolescence. Now, when, for a straight guy, we want the attention of girls, a gay guy, attention of other men. We want to attract people to us, get connection, get validation, be approved of, really kicks in. Well, how do I do that? And for most nice guys, it's, I'll be nice. I'll treat people well. I won't be the jerk. I'll do things for people. Nowadays they call them simps. I'll just, everything. I'll give them gifts. I'll listen to them talk about their problems. I'll help them out. I'll fix things. And it's all, I call it nice guy seduction because we don't believe we're okay just as we are. Our toxic shame says, I'm broken. I'm defective. I'm unlovable. I'm bad. I've got to hide that and become something. So the two things nice guys are trying to do because of that toxic shame and the anxiety that tends to get associated with it is, number one, try to become what we think other people want us to be. I'll be the good guy. I'll be the good listener. I'll be patient. I won't get mad. I won't be selfish. And number two, we try to hide anything that we think might get a negative reaction from people. And nice guys tend to hide their wants, their needs, their feelings, their beliefs, their opinions, and especially their sexuality. Because we live in a culture, i.e. the whole world, where sex is still seen in pretty negative light. And so we, of course, are sexual beings, but if we think being a sexual being with sexual wants and desires, little boys have sexual drives, sexual needs, sexual wants and desires. My son and my stepson, they love playing with their peepees and comparing them and talking about them. That's normal. They'd walk into a department store with naked mannequins at 3 and go, boobs. So, we have the sexuality in us. But if culture, family, religion says that's bad, we better hide it. And as you probably know, anything we repress gets expressed. Whatever we push down, whether it's our shame, our fear, our anxiety, our wants, our needs, our sexuality, it's gonna come out somewhere, especially sexuality. It's the most powerful force in all of creation. So it's gonna get expressed. It's gonna go somewhere. But in these cases, often in hidden, dark, and maybe not real adaptive kind of ways. So that's kind of a little bit of the nutshell of the nice guy and how he internalizes these beliefs and develops his survival mechanisms, defense mechanisms, neuroses to try to be loved, liked, and get his needs met and avoid painful consequences of rejection, of being punished, being hurt, being left.
I wonder your perspective. I've asked, I think, several people this same question. What do you think is at the root of shame in relation to sexual desire as a not just Western culture, but it seems like fairly ubiquitous across the planet? It's the most important thing we can be involved in, while simultaneously the most shameful and repugnant for people.
You know, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but you're right. Again, our sex drive, every living being, let's just say every animal, we'll keep it pretty simple, but plants includes plants as well, has two drives. Survive, so that means we got to eat, sleep, do whatever it takes to survive. That's a drive. The other drive is procreate, create after our kind. That's just built into living creatures. Otherwise, we wouldn't exist, right? So we wouldn't pass that gene on. So we've all got this amazingly powerful sex drive. And my sense is if it occurred in a natural space and environment, like maybe our tribal ancestors were for maybe 1.5 million years before we started settling down, becoming more agrarian about 10,000 years ago. My understanding is that probably in tribal times, most things were pretty shared. The food, the shelter, the protection, including sexual access. So probably in a natural environment, and actually Osho even talks about this, that if young adolescents could just have sexual access, that, they tend to just do what Mother Nature wired them to do without shame, without, issues. And then by the time they actually kind of come through that adolescence, young adult, they kind of move on from even, having a strong sexual desire. Osho says that, we actually should be over that stuff by our 40s of having a sex drive. Now, whether that's accurate or not, um, none of us get to go through that natural progression. As much as it makes us in culture uncomfortable, it should be the 14, 15, 16, 17-year-olds having a lot of sex. It's what they're wired to do. It's when they're at their peak of their hormonal drives. By the time a man hits 25-ish, he's actually starting the decline. But because I think most of us never go through anything that resembles a healthy, natural, kind of the way Mother Nature wants it kind of way, lots of penises and lots of vaginas. By the time we hit, your age, you're in your late 30s, I'm in my late 60s. I know men my age that are still obsessed about getting laid as much as they can because they never actually went through a space where that just happened easily and naturally for them. So when they kind of, again, we get obsessed and we get stuck in that process. So my basic theory is, and this is just my opinion and theory, is that I think what happened, I think once we became more agrarian and developed what's called a patriarchal society, where men started owning stuff, piece of land, a cow, sheep, a tree, their woman's vagina, the children that came out of the vagina, where men started owning stuff, we kind of ran into a crisis because the women in tribal times developed really high sex drives. I talk about women being sexual Ferraris and their bodies being a sexual pleasure palace. Women have more parts in their body to trigger pleasure and orgasm. We guys, one, maybe two, things that can get us off, places on our body. And I think because the women had these high sex drives and were used to just copulating with all the men of the tribe, and then when men started saying, no, you belong to me, you're my property, all of a sudden men started feeling really inadequate. Oh, I can't keep up with her. We can't. Women can have multiple orgasms, multiple partners. They have no refractory period. We guys, once we ejaculate, it's kind of like, I got to take a nap. It'll be a while before I'm ready to go again. And, and so we have this meme in modern culture, women aren't interested in sex, or they think sex is bad, or you got to get them in the mood. But if that were true, why have we stigmatized female sex so much for the last few thousand years? Why did we put them in burqas, chastity belts, stone them, put scarlet letters on their heads? Why did we create slut shaming that still exists to this very day around women who have sex? Now we just call it in red pill community body count. And now we're dismissive of women who've had more sex than we guys have because that fucking intimidates us. We go, wait a minute, I can't keep up with that. So I kind of think we created religion to give the men in power a way to manage their power, to try to control female sexuality and make people feel bad enough about natural, normal, God-given expressions of themselves that you can manage them and keep them under control. So if you can impose shame, guilt, fear, anxiety on any natural occurring human behavior, and if you can get people to buy in and feel bad and feel shame and feel guilt and feel evil, you can control them from birth till death. And I think that's what we've done, because you're right, ubiquitous. I love that word. First time I ever heard it, I said, I got to put that in a book. You just
Or
listen
in
to
there.
my book. I say it a time or two in there. I probably mispronounce it, but I love the word. So
Yeah.
this sex is bad is almost a universal message in this world. And we are the only animal that has shame about being sexual. I grew up with fundamental religion, so I kind of know the whole drill about sex is evil, dirty, sinful. Save it for the one you love. I promise you, you don't get married and just switch off. 20-something years of programming around sex. It just doesn't happen. And so I grew up with that model. But so I kind of mess with people I know that bring kind of religion into their view of sexuality. I said, number one, what was the first commandment God gave to Adam and Eve? And most Christians and most people of Abrahamic faith, whether it's Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, kind of look at me and go, he told them, go fuck a lot. They're going, that's not in the Bible. Yeah, it is. The Bible says, be fruitful and multiply. That means go fuck a lot. God told Adam and Eve, go have sex. That was the first commandment. And so where did we get this thing that somehow sex is bad, evil, dirty, and sinful? Now, bring it in the New Testament times, and people, the Christian will say, well, this about this. I said, show me in the Bible where Jesus condemned anybody for having sex. Condemned gay men, condemned anybody for premarital sex, extramarital sex. Doesn't exist. Jesus did not condemn one living soul for having sex. But somehow, if you are at all religious, you probably have some, beliefs about sex. Now that's now permeated culture, even if you're not religious. In America, for example, consensual sex, contractual consensual sex between two adults will get somebody thrown in jail, get you posted on a billboard because you're a bad person and you're doing this thing. We continue the slut shaming by calling it human trafficking, even when it's not human trafficking. Human trafficking is terrible. It's evil. We need to stop it. But two adults consenting to have sex with each other and having an overt contract is not crime. But because of our religious underpinnings, it's still bad. It's still evil. And we create reasons to convince ourselves that those things are bad or evil. So I'm not saying pro, con, any of this stuff. I'm just saying this is how it has affected us culturally. Then let's bombard every human with sexual stimuli. You live in Western culture, whether it's movies, television, commercials for Pizza Hut, Lexus automobiles, our music, we're bombarded with it. And now porn is ubiquitous. Anybody can get it at any time. A 4-year-old who has a smartphone in their hand because their parents put it there to entertain them can download porn. It's just everywhere. So not only are we taught and told, and we pick up from our culture, sex is bad, we're bombarded with it. So it gets cross-wired. Sex gets cross-wired with some sense of guilt and shame. And in my workshops, I'll often do a practice where I'll ask people, what's your first sexual memory? Whatever it is. Might be first kiss, might be first boner, it might be first wet dream, it might be, I'll show you mine, you show me yours with the neighbor, next door, the little girl. It might be abuse. It might be any number of things that we remember as our first sexual memory. It may feel kind of positive, it may not. But then I'll ask people, did that experience happen in the open? Could it be seen? Could it be talked about? Could you go to your parents and tell them and they say, that's amazing. That's an important developmental stage. Let's go get pizza and celebrate. No, nobody's ever told me that happened. But what usually you hear, it was hidden. It was dark. There was fear of getting caught, going to get in trouble. Maybe you did get caught touching your pee-pee and got in trouble. Maybe you got shamed for it. Maybe it even felt good. Probably it felt good, but it felt bad at the same time. Oh, this is wrong. I could get in trouble. And that especially messes with people when it is actual abuse, when somebody is perpetrating abuse on a child and it feels physically good to the child, but then the child knows, but this isn't right. I'm not supposed to be doing this. And now they feel bad. So the majority of us have shame, fear, anxiety, hidden darkness cross-wired with our sexuality. And that's kind of why we all walk around with a lot of neuroses these days. Is that just such a powerful dynamic going on in pretty much every culture in the world?
Yeah. Yeah. Stashing sex aside as an addiction, as a shameful addiction, seems also quite more ubiquitous, I'd imagine, than most people would like to share. How does a person start to begin the process of unwinding shame within themselves to become more authentic and expressed?
Good question. In No More Mr. Nice Guy, one of the earliest things I say is that you can't do this alone. We did not become nice guys. We did not internalize any kind of shame in social isolation. It occurred in the context of the world, of people. And to release shame, we need other people. Now, I've worked with guys almost exclusively for 20 plus years now. And there's a thing about us guys is we want to go it alone. We want to do it alone. Just give me a book to read, give me a YouTube video, give me an Audible, whatever. I'll read it. I'll go do a workshop. I'll watch the video and then I'll work it out. Now, that's not how you release shame. You have to release shame in the context of people, other people who we have a fear that they might judge us, that they might see us as bad. And so to begin the process, and how I began it, about 3 years into my second marriage, I had acted out in a way, about a year before. And I stopped because it didn't feel good. And then about a year later, the person told my wife about it, and she was understandably upset. She said, everybody thinks you're a nice guy, but you're not. I can't trust you, blah, blah, you're a sex addict. So you need to go get help. So I thought, okay, I'll go get help. And I landed in some perfect places for me. And one was a group for sex addicts. I quickly found out I wasn't having enough sex to be a sex addict. I really am a validation addict. Somebody wanting or desiring me makes me feel
Or love addiction over
I'm
sex
much more of a
addiction.
love addict, much more of
Yeah.
a love addict. But this was like my first men's group. It was like, 8, 10, 9, 10 guys, all with some pretty, pretty crazy stuff going on in their lives. And I'm going every week. And for the first time in my life, because I grew up with that fundamental Christianity where you're pretty much taught to hide everything, an angry, critical father, the angry feminism of the 60s and 70s, every man's a rapist, an erection's a sign of aggression. I hid everything about me. I was not an open, transparent, vulnerable person. I tried to get everything right, do everything right, hide anything that might get a negative reaction. So I'm going to this 12-step group for the first time in my life. I'm just talking about stuff I've never told anybody. And it felt good. Nowadays they call it vulnerability. So I was being vulnerable. I was revealing things. And the worst thing that happens in a 12-step group is they smile at you and say, thanks for sharing, Robert. So, nobody reacts, nobody goes off. And then you hear them share stuff and you go, that's, pretty crazy stuff there. But you realize you don't judge them. You don't think they're bad. Because when people are being vulnerable, you actually like them. You actually, feel more of a connection to them.
Yeah, they become
So
magnetic.
Yeah, it is magnetic, that vulnerability.
Yeah.
And so then I started working
Because you
with it.
desire it within yourself.
Let's go with that. Yeah, it
I
just
think like you desire the liberation that they're expressing. It's like, oh wow, they just exhaled all of this shit. Like I
all of
want
it.
to get that out of me. I just don't trust it's safe to get that out of me.
And that's the thing. We think we're going to get hurt, shamed, rejected, told we're bad. And when that doesn't happen, two things I believe happen in this process. One is, I guess for lack of a better term, we release the shame that we've been packing around inside. It takes a burden off. It's a release of energy that kept it hidden and pressed down. But a second thing happened that I think is equally valuable, maybe a second and third thing. The second thing is we get more accurate feedback. No, you're not a bad person, or actually, that's kind of normal. I do that too. Or you find out, you get more accurate feedback to replace the distorted view you have of yourself. And then it also invites what we were just talking about, that reciprocity of other people to reveal as well. And then you kind of get to know them better. I like you better because you are fucked up. You know,
I don't feel judged by you.
I don't feel judged and I don't feel judgmental of me. So there's that process that requires safe people. It can be a coach, it can be a therapist, it can be a minister, it can be a priest, it can be a 12-step group, it can be a best friend. Probably not a family member, probably not your girlfriend or your wife, because we do have much more fear of being judged by them and being rejected and left. And those people, as much as they might be happy we're doing our work, they've also got a conscious or unconscious agenda that we don't change too much. Now, and then again, we're all that way. I started doing marriage therapy 40 years ago as a therapist. And I can't tell you how many people came to me for therapy. Maybe their partner had been saying, you need therapy, you need therapy. They go to therapy and now their partner is terrified they're going to leave them because they're going to go to therapy. And most partners go, oh, they're going to get better and find out how messed up I am. Or the therapist is going to tell them how messed up I am and they should leave me. So the act of personal growth by one person within a system of whether it be a partner or family or even friends, one person start growing, it makes everybody else uncomfortable, at least for a while. Maybe even, among your friends, you start growing the kind of crabs in the bucket thing. Pull you back into the bucket. Don't leave us. Who are you that you're going to go, be someone different than us? So it can make the people around you systemically uncomfortable and afraid. You may get change back messages. That's why probably don't start this work with family, friends, and partner. Go do it with people that have no dog in the fight about who you are as a person, and they're just going to hear you and see you as you are. Then we can start revealing more of this to friends, to family, because it feels like a lot bigger risk. But once you've kind of done it and gotten it under your belt and it went well, you can take those bigger chances with the people closer to you.
Something you mentioned in your book, Nowhere Mr. Nice Guy. I think I'm paraphrasing. I don't know if you mentioned exactly this way, but there's no such thing as if you were a quote unquote expressing as a toxic person. Now I'm very much paraphrasing. You didn't say exactly this at all, but expressing as a toxic person in a relationship, then the person that you were in a relationship would also be expressing toxicity within themselves. There wouldn't be a person that is in complete wholeness and integration and alignment that is in relationship with a person that is not. And I found that to be interesting because I'm a big fan of responsibility, and culpability and leaning into like, where am I in this? What do you think about that as a concept?
Yeah. To take your paraphrase, my training, my professional training as a marriage and family therapist is called systems family therapy. And it is based on a model of when a system enters the office of the therapist. That system, at least the adult part of it, the child part of it, no, because children don't really have a lot of influence on how the system looks. They're more of a reactive state. But the theory, basically in a nutshell, is however the system exists between, let's say, a husband and wife, two partners, however it exists that way because both people need it to exist exactly that way. Otherwise, it would exist in some other way. But what happens is most people come in my office and they're thinking, well, one of two things happen. either one person's going, it's them, maybe the other person is the same, it's them, or they both colluded with, yeah, it's me, yeah, it's him, right? So it's like we have to have a bad guy. It's got to be somebody's fault. So either we're all going to agree it's this person's fault. Oh, he's looking at porn. It's his fault. That's the problem, right? Or we say, well, she's controlling and mean and angry all the time and doesn't want to have sex anymore. Well, I can't trust him. He does this. He lets me down. I can't depend on him. So systemically, as a therapist, as a change agent, if I buy into their story of what's happening, of having there's got to be an identified patient, it's him, it's her, oh, it's them. I'm just perpetuating their mythology, and I'm not going to be of any service. And so to really help a transformational shift happen, my job is to see systemically what's going on. I think I was attracted to this particular kind of work, and because guys would used to tell me, I'm analytical because I'm an engineer, and I go, probably you became an engineer because you're analytical. I think I became a systems therapist because I'm kind of a systems analyst. I can look at almost any kind of system, human system, animals, even mechanical systems. And even if I don't know why something's not working or not, I actually know where to start looking and theorizing about what might not be working in the system. That's what you've got to do in these situations with a couple or family. Why is this happening? Why do both people need this to be happening? And what is their story? And what is the reframe or the different place of perception I can give the people to look at it, to see it in a different way, to see why both people either invited someone into their life because it worked for them, and whatever worked means, worked in a dysfunctional or toxic way, or trained our partner to be a certain way because it worked. And another way of saying this or looking at it is that, going back to the model of when you and I were just little, and we had to survive and basically get on the good side of the big, powerful people that had control over our lives and well-being. We developed certain relationship tools that we started adding to our relationship toolbox. And, my example with my father, he was angry and unpredictable and critical, but also could be kind of warm and loving and enjoyed family activities, and he taught me sports and came to my games and practices, took me camping and fishing. So my tools are kind of like, all right, you put up with shit to get love. Here's how you manage angry, unpredictable dad. Here's how you please dad by performing in the ways that he liked. I've got those tools. Mom is the unhappy, disappointed person who is codependent, waiting hand and foot on my narcissistic father. And she's training her children to be different, her daughters to be different from her, i.e., don't be a codependent woman who serves a man, be independent, and raising her sons to be different from their father. She told me that as a child. Later, she apologized for both doing it and saying it. And so I became, with my mother, the good man who was different from father, who I would listen to her talk about her problems, help her solve her problems, try to make her happy, be available whenever she might need me. Those are the tools I developed to manage that relationship. All right, I become a teenager, young adult. And as I start trying to create relationships to feel loved, get my needs met, have companionship, I am going to attract, look for, find unconsciously, consciously, mostly unconscious, people who fit these tools. So is it any surprise to anybody that I picked women that can alternate between kind of being, needy, fix me, be there for me, solve my problems, listen to me, or the ones who are angry and unpredictable and are loving and then they're not. And one moment they're hot and they're cold. I've done both. Why? I've got the tools that fit those people. Now, do those tools actually work? No, they don't. But they're all I've got. So I've got to co-create systems with people then let me use the tools I've got. Now, here is my one of my thoughts about conscious relationships, whether it's dating, long-term relationships. Well, if we're relating to another person, we're trying to do something that is not actually very natural or part of our DNA. It's not built into us. And it is challenging to think we're going to go live with a member of the opposite sex and get along really well for long periods of time. It ain't going to happen. But if we're conscious of our relationship dynamics, they're powerful personal growth machines. I got that from a guy named Dr. David Snarch, who wrote a beautiful book called Passionate Marriage. Powerful personal growth machines. When we start looking at, oh, I invited you into my life because you fit these tools, but now I'm using those tools to try to get you to quit being that way because it gets on my nerves when you're that way. You're just like my father. You're just like my mother. Yeah, that's why we invite. And I heard one person, I read one person, a book on codependency years ago, that said we tend to be attracted to people who have some of the worst traits of both of our parents. So I don't know what your relationship status is, but let's say your most recent relationship. Would that be informative to know you were attracted to them because they have some of the worst traits of both your mom and dad, and they were attracted to you because you have some of the worst traits of both their mother and father? Now, that's not the whole story. There's lots of other good things going on there as well. But if we can have this mindset that whatever's going on between me and my partner, I need it to be that way. Kind of like from the book Existential Cake, where she quotes Freud, not Freud, but Jung, and says, having is evidence of wanting. So it doesn't matter if you're coming from systems family therapy, Carl Jung, just basic relationship. All of these things keep pointing to we are going to unconsciously co-create things that feel familiar to us. That's what the human mind does. Even if it feels painful and toxic, we're going to do it. And if we can be the watcher and the observer and the noticer of that, it's a great portal into going back into our past and getting in touch with these things that created our neuroses and use that as a way of cleaning them out and developing some healthier relationship tools and maybe making some conscious decisions to invite a different kind of person into our life as we work on us. And it can shift the entire system.
I think like the $1,000,000 question that I and probably lots of people would have is at what point, or I did an interview with another woman recently here called Annie Lala. I've also done therapy sessions with her as well. She's great. And one of the things that she suggested is that when we are finding a person to be in a relationship with, it's as though we are asking the universe is providing the exact catalysts we need for our own growth. And so it's nudging right up against those subconscious aspects of ourselves that we're not really aware of, but we need to address. And they're fulfilling those specific roles. And sometimes I think that the solution probably is you develop enough growth within yourself that you realize, like this is not a match for me anymore. I've evolved out of this archetype person is not a match for me anymore. And then the other question is, at what point does a relationship or a partnership, at what point do the two people lean in and say, this actually is for our growth and we can grow together and move through this together?
Yeah, those are all good questions, and I agree with the observation. Whether we're looking at kind of from a spiritual point of view, that this is coming together because it's meant to be to help us do our work. Whether we're looking at it purely from a systemic point of view, a psychological point of view, an analytical point of view, there's lots of evidence to say this serves a purpose. It's happening for a reason. And that if it can do one thing, if it can get us out of the victim mentality, I'm being done to. I had one client where early in my work around nice guy syndrome, when I started seeing my traits in the clients I worked with who were coming for couples therapy, there's a quote I put in the book. And the guy would proclaim, I'm a victim of her dysfunction. And that kind of became kind of a funny, kind of like when you tell the same joke over and over again, it stays funny for quite a while. That got repeated in lots of different contexts, like the joke you might say, that's what she said. Yeah, that's right. You're a victim of her dysfunction. There's no way out of that. The only way out of that is either to get them to quit being dysfunctional or trade them in for another dysfunctional model. And so you can keep being a victim. If, however we go about it, whatever ownership we can take, whether we kind of the Jungian ownership, having as evidence of wanting, okay, why do I want this? What purpose is it serving? whether it's a systemic model, family of origin model, spiritual model, whatever model we want to look at it, if it helps us take accountability for the choices we made, consciously or unconsciously, and that this is here for one primary reason, and that is to grow us, to grow us, to help us see ourselves more clearly and grow. And it's not about we got to become better people or different people, or they got to become different or better. In most cases, we just have to become more loving and more accepting people of both of ourselves and others. But as long as we're in that victim, it's her fault, it's him, yeah, it's me, I did it, I'm the bad. As long as we're doing that, there's no window opening to say, why does this exist and what can we learn from it? How can we grow? How can we be each other's allies? My wife and I, Lupita, we've been married, we'll be 8 years next month. And we're the most unlikely of couples. She's my third wife. I'm her first husband. She doesn't speak English. She grew up in Mexico, 8 out of 10 kids in Guadalajara, Mexico, alcoholic father, abusive family system, beat on, abused, sexually abused, violated by everybody she's ever known, cheated on by everybody she's ever known. I grew up in white bread, Seattle, Washington, with a bunch of Boeing engineers' families playing soccer and baseball. You know, my family, my parents were married till my dad died in 2010. Now, not that all that was perfect, but here's my wife. She's 22 years younger than me. Dropped out of high school at 15 just to work to buy clothes for herself. I had a PhD at 29. We don't speak the same language. She has 2 kids, my stepkids, who are the same age as my granddaughter. So everybody probably look at that and go, Robert, what the hell are you thinking? And we've had our struggles. And I got back into a men's program, got a coach because I got work to do. She's her trauma is I'm gonna get left. You're gonna leave me. So every woman's butt she thought I was looking at, you were looking at that woman's butt. She clams up, withdraws, get mad, and or you must have a girlfriend. You're smiling at your phone, or even just a couple of days. She's gotten really so much better about this. But a couple of days ago, she goes, if you've got a girlfriend in Austin, just tell me. It's okay. I've gotten now instead of, I don't have a girlfriend in Austin. I actually invited you to come with me, but you wanted to go to a dance. Instead of doing all of that, I just love her. I just look at her and go, I love you so much. And it's taken a lot of hard work, but she's worked on her triggers that she brought into our relationship, that every man she's ever known has been a serial cheater. I've worked on my triggers. I'm a good guy. Don't accuse me of things I haven't done. I've been working at being the good guy all my life. And the truth is, I got plenty of darkness and shadow that, has not always been very pretty. And it's helped us both. And as unlikely as she and I are as a couple, I had to learn Spanish. I got to learn Spanish. I took it as a gift, a blessing. As unlikely as we are, it's the best relationship I've ever had. And our communication, maybe because we can't go super deep with words, we kind of got to keep it simple of how we're communicating, what's important. It's good communication. We joke about seeing who can outlove the other, outgift the other, outserve the other. My life has gotten better in every way because of this woman. I'm probably alive today because of this woman. She found the doctor that saved my life about 7 years ago. I know I made her life better in every way. Not just that she gets to live in a nice home and her kids go to a private school and she gets to wear Lululemon and fly first class and drive a Jeep Rubicon. Her life's better in every way, but so's mine. And I think that's what relationships supposed to be about, is how does it make our lives better? But to get there, it almost as if it's got to drag us through the muck of all the stuff we're still packing around. And we're going to be packing stuff around till the day we die. So are we willing to go through the messy stuff that any partner is going to bring up from us and be willing to go through it? Now, in the midst of that, I don't encourage people to stay with partners that are abusive, that are addictive and won't deal with their addictions, who are unfaithful, who can't tell the truth. who are so immature they can't take a. I wouldn't encourage anybody to stay there. There's no growth in that. The actual growth is probably setting boundaries and getting away from that. That's actually good practice. Getting away from people where there is no possibility that they will grow with you. But if my wife's personal mantra is si yo quiero, yo puedo. If I want to, I can. She's my model for facing fears and doing hard things. I'm just grateful every day she's in my life. Has she made me nuts at times? She me haces loco. Yeah. I tell her that, she'll joke, who's crazier, her or Pitbull Nala? There's just it, but she goes, maybe you need to go find another woman. I don't, no, no, no. I know your craziness. I know how to work with it. I don't need to go find some other kind of craziness I don't know how to work with. So we've blessed each other's lives. Has it been easy? No. Um, am I amazingly grateful that I was walking down the street in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and I heard a voice say, "Hola, senor, want a massage?" And I said, no, no way. Kept walking, thought, I liked your voice. That's it. I liked your voice. I walked back and I said, how much? And like I said, now we're coming up on our 8th wedding anniversary. So these gifts happen in such interesting ways if we're willing to welcome them as a gift. And again, yes, remove yourself from people who are mean, who are addicted, who, are not willing to challenge themselves to grow. You don't need that in your life. And again, that's probably good work in itself. But if a person's willing to grow, if they treat you well, with respect, it's just, their projections come out because they've got trauma, they got wounding. That's right for some pretty good work right there. If they're willing to grow with you and you're willing to grow. And it all goes back to, can you own your shit, be vulnerable, and say, I'm going to keep going through it. Kind of like on the ayahuasca plant medicine. When they gave us instructions, they said, breathe, open, go towards what scares you. And they said, if you have a vision of puppies playing over here and your childhood abuser over here, go towards the thing that's difficult, that scares you. And I apply that in all areas of life. My mantra is I treat fear as my North Star. And so being vulnerable is what I fear. That's where I need to go. And I've got a lot of amazing people in my life that, help me do my work. And my wife is, just beautiful, perfect at helping me do my work.
No. That feels like a really beautiful place to wrap it up. I had more questions and then you summated things so well. I'm so
summated. I am going to have to use that word in a sentence.
Is there anything else that you feel inclined to share? I know, there's things that I would like to share for you. Like you have groups that people can join. Is it a men's group specifically?
It's a men's program. It's called Integration Nation. I launched it July of 23. I've always been about building community for men. Men do their deepest and best work with other men. And, it's hard for men to get out of this thing of trying to please women and have their approval. You get in a group of men, you can cut through that pretty quick. Men get down to their deepest stuff. So I've always been about building community. And this is a community, pretty much built around No More Mr. Nice Guy, about leveling up to the best version of ourselves, living our best life, learning to love ourselves, have self-respect. And I believe that happens best in a community of men. So integrationnation.net is my men's community.
Is there such a thing as these exact same dynamics applying to a woman? Is there no more Mrs. Nice Girl?
Well, that's another podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to do that. I would love to have that conversation because I find it.
There is. And I'll briefly touch on it. I think nice girls existed long before nice guys. I think women have been conditioned for many years to be, caretakers and to be nurturing. And maybe it's even part of, the female DNA to nurture and nest and take care of the things in the nest. And we've seen a big switch culturally in the last 60 years where now, women are all being told, oh no, it's demeaning to be a wife and have children. It was especially demeaning to be a housewife. That's an ugly word. You need a career, never be dependent on a man. And there's value in not being dependent on anybody. But if the feminine's greatest desire is connection and the flow of love, feminine you, feminine in me, feminine in women, and they're being told, no, that's dismissive. That's under you. You know, go get a career. Go be male. Go be masculine. So we've got the big switch where more and more women now are more in their masculine a lot, and more men are in their feminine. I mean, I look how well you trim your beard and do your hair and mousse and your haircut. That's all feminine. It's like, you know, you pay attention. I look good. I look nice. Those aren't judgments. But most men, especially around your age, are just a lot more in their feminine. And, you know, I think there's actually probably some good swings of the pendulum for both men and women. And I think we'll actually, I don't think we'll swing back to a middle ground. I think we'll kind of come out in a place that's even better, more conscious and authentic way of being, where people can just be themselves, or whatever that looks like. So yeah, nice girls have been around for quite some time. And I get a lot of emails from women about my book. When Barnes and Noble published it 20 something years ago, I think they hoped there'd be some blowback, maybe like feminist blowback. There never was, never has been. I get more angry emails from men than I do from women, and I don't get many. But most emails I get from women say, "Thank you for your book. I can see myself in it, or it helps me understand my father, my brother, my ex." But yeah, a lot of women can still relate to the covert contracts, the giving to get, the seeking validation outside of themselves, the avoiding of conflict. And you know, years ago I thought, well, maybe I'd write a book for women. And somebody asked me about that the other day. But one editor told me years ago, she said, Robert, no, don't write a book for women. I think you need to be seen by men as I'm on your side. We're together in this. I'm with you. And when somebody asked me the other day about writing a book for women, I don't think I could write as good a book because I don't know what it feels like to be a woman codependent. I know what it feels like to be codependent and live in this borrowed functioning reality of I need somebody to have my sense of identity. But I can't tell the story of the experience of a woman because I've never had it. So I don't think I'll ever go there with it. But there are a lot of good books out there for women around codependency. Women Who Love Too Much, some other books like that. So yeah, there are plenty of nice girls out there as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I've really enjoyed
This
this
was fun.
conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. As we both do our little bit of, personal physical recovery work. I enjoyed getting to talk to you and look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, for sure, brother. All right. That's it, though. That's all. Thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you next week.